necessary investment and maintenance. Tax incentive to roll out rooftop solar panels not only assists households and business in generating electricity for their own use, but also supports the national grid. Under the expanded incentives for businesses, investments in renewable energy will allow business to claim a 125% deduction in the first year for all renewable energy projects with no thresholds on generation capacity. In the area of wage negotiations, Cabinet calls upon all parties to remain committed to the process of public service coordinating bargaining council collective agreement and to arrive at a solution that serves the best interest of our country. It is vitally important that we all work together for the good of our nation and her people. While the right to strike is protected, it must be done in a reasonable manner that upholds our democracy and the rule of law. Cabinet reminds everyone that those who are planning to strike must do so in a peaceful manner and should refrain from any form of intimidation and destruction of infrastructure and properties. In the anti-corruption space, Cabinet joined President Cyril Ramaphosa in his call for former ESCOM CEO Andre de Ruyter to report allegations of corruption at ESCOM to the police. Our crime-fighting institution stands ready to arrest and prosecute those who break the law. We call upon anyone with information related to crime and corruption to report what they know to the relevant law enforcement authorities. All of us are duty-bound to fight corruption and to the prescriptions of the prevention and combating of corruption activities, commonly known as PRECA Act, which requires people in position of authority in public and private sector to report all corruption activities. In the Financial Action Task Force space, Cabinet noted a decision by the Financial Action Task Force to list South Africa as a jurisdiction under increased monitoring, or more commonly referred to as FATF's grey list. While the FATF recognized the significant progress made by the country in addressing the shortcomings highlighted in its mutual evaluation report, it assessed that there is more needed to be done. Cabinet is cognizant that addressing the identified shortcomings will be in the interest of our country. Government is committed to work swiftly to strengthen the effectiveness of its anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing regime. On the Ugandan state visit, Cabinet welcomed the successful state visit by His Excellency President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni of the Republic of Uganda to South Africa on the 28th February 2023. During the visit, the two heads of state addressed a business forum and explored trade and investment opportunities. They also witnessed the signing of memorandums of understanding on a number of areas, which included, amongst others, industrial development cooperation, tourism, transport, communication technologies, correctional services, and women, youth, and persons with disabilities. The Republic of Uganda is South Africa's 15th largest trading partner on the continent and the second largest in East Africa. Between 2017 and 2021, a total trade between the two countries reached about 3 billion. About the AU, President Cyril Ramaphosa, His Excellency, led the South African delegation at the African Union Summit in Ethiopia under the theme Open Quote, Acceleration of Africa Continental Free Trade Area Implementation, close quote. South Africa provided updates on the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. As chair of the AU Peace and Security Council, the country also provided an update on progress towards silencing the guns in Africa by 2030. As AU COVID-19 champion, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa presented proposals on how the African Centers for Disease Control can be strengthened and measures adopted to better prepare the continent for pandemics. Under the leadership of the President Cyril Ramaphosa, COVID-19 African Vaccine Acquisition Task Team was established and in support of the Africa Vaccine Strategy. South Africa also secured over 500 million COVID-19 vaccine doses for the continent. Further, the African Pandemic Response Fund was established, which mobilized $137 million for local production of vaccines, diagnostics, personal protective equipment, oxygen, and critical medicines. The African Medical Supplies Platform was also launched to ensure access to vital medical supplies for all African countries. On the gender-based violence and femicide, government condemns the persistent cases of gender-based violence and femicide and continues to intensify its fighting through several interventions. This includes extensive legal reform, the establishment of GBV Response Fund, and the support for Tutuzela and Kuseleka care centers, which provide vital services for GBV survivors. Furthermore, partnership that government has forged with civil society, business, development partners, the faith-based sector and other sectors to work together to deal with the scourge of GBV remain critical. On health, Cabinet welcomed the deliberations of the historic International Medical Countermeasures meeting that the country co-hosted under the theme Open Code, Building Consensus for an Equitable and Sustainable Medical Countermeasures Platform for the Next Pandemic, close quotes. The meeting explored options to secure equitable access to life-saving vaccine, diagnostic and therapeutic for future pandemics based on the need and not on wealth. This began a consensus-building exercise ahead of the high-level meeting on pandemic prevention, preparedness and response at the 78th United Nations General Assembly this year. In a separate but related development, the recent Traditional Medicine Summit hosted by the Department of Health is part of resolutions taken at the World Health Organization, African Union as well as Southern Africa Development Community to integrate traditional medicine into the health systems. On the child immunization and cholera, the measles outbreak poses a risk to children who are not immunized. Parents and legal guardians are urged to ensure that their children are immunized as part of the nationwide child immunization campaign. Measles symptoms include fever, red eyes, running nose, and cough, typically appearing before the characteristic rash. Following the recent rise in cholera cases, Cabinet urged citizens to be vigilant on any symptoms, which include diarrhea, dehydration, vomiting, and body weaknesses, spread mainly through polluted water or contaminated food. The public is reminded to boil water, cook food thoroughly, and practice basic hygiene of washing hands with soap and water to prevent transmission. All people who experience cholera-like symptoms, with or without local or international travel history, must immediately visit their nearest health facilities. On the water security, Cabinet welcomed the launch of the country's largest reservoir, the Vlakfontein Reservoir in Gauteng, which can store up to 210 million liters of water, equivalent to 24 hours of water demand, and is expected to be completed in April 2023. The project has created about 220 job opportunities for the local communities and 110 jobs in Ekurhuleni local municipality. Cabinet called on South Africans to protect our water infrastructure by reporting vandalism to the police on 0800 10 111 and water leaks to your local municipality. Citizens can also play their part in using water sparingly.
Did the cabinet say whether it disagreed with the decision by or with the assessment by the United States government on the advisory posed, ergo that there is no threat that warrants the stockpiling of that food and supplies? Lastly, not sure if you'd be able to answer, Minister, would it be appropriate for government ministers to be outlining their programs of action for the rest of the year when we're anticipating a cabinet reshuffle? Thank you.
Can come in.
Mondli Gungubele from ENCA. Just a follow-up on what my colleague has asked on the issue of the US alert. Will the South African government, through DERCO, following diplomatic channels, of course, be engaging with the Americans following the release or the issue visa alert? If so, when is that going to happen? Number two, it's just a clarification question on the BRICS summit and the host city or the host province. If my memory serves me well, Durban in KwaZulu-Natal was said to have been the preferred host city for the summit. What has changed? What made the government to re-evaluate and decide to come up with Gauteng as the host
BRICS?
Yes, BRICS summit, yes. Number three, Cabinet seems to have to sing high praises for former Deputy President David Mabuza, yet critics would argue that he has been missing in action for the better part of his term of office. This praise that you sing of former Deputy President David Mabuza, what do you base it on? Is it based on performance? Because clearly many South Africans would appear to disagree with you on that one. If we have time, the last one from me, on the issue of 22 Afghan nationals that the Department of Home Affairs vehemently opposed their application for asylum visas to be granted, but the court said they must be granted. What is the position of the South African government in that regard? Thank you.
I think let me allow Minister to come in first. I think it's a
Okay, if they are finished.
Can I ask another one, Minister? Just more substantively, it's going again.
That was gear one.
Thanks. No, it's just to add on to the initial question. Has the cabinet received any reports of anticipated civil unrest in South Africa? Just adding on to that US question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Minister, over to you.
Governor asked if I got you. You said incidental upon pronouncing state of disaster. Is there reprioritization of funds and whatever? As I'm saying, we will be briefing the country on the regulations which we have already issued. Whether there's a reprioritization of funds and maybe taking particular approach on certain procedural requirements will depend on issue by issue, and then will be followed in line with the regulations. Regulations are very clear when should you reprioritize and not, but we're not able to say on those items. All what we have done, if you remember, the purpose of the declaration, one is to fast-track execution. Two, to minimize impact. So as you are sitting, different departments, we are actually assessing with regard to how the regulations are actually assisting them. to ensure that from their respective department, they do ensure that we minimize the impact. Whether there will be representation of funds or not, it will depend on issue by issue. The department, what to call, the only thing cabinet could support is the regulations to be applicable as enunciated. If you check our statement, what we're saying, we're just stating the fact that that alert is a normal alert that sometimes America does, not only in South Africa, a number of countries talking to its citizens. All what we're saying to South Africa, in as far as our information is concerned, we don't have that. And we're making a commitment that when that instance or that situation develops, we'll actually take the nation into confidence. Whether then we're having engagement, yes, engagement, we expect the engagements to continue because at times it has a potential to actually create serious problems in the country. If you remember the alert in Santi, sort of disturbance it caused in the country. People were not sure whether to believe South Africa or whether to believe the United States. Because when we were saying to South Africans, if there is such a warning, there is such a development, we'll let you know, but would not undermine. If another country says in your country, they think there is something, you don't just dismiss it. You check it and then come back to your process based on our information. There is no basis. That's the kind of engagement we have with that. So it answers Pamandla whether those the engagement will continue to be there to actually nudge America that whatever concerns we have about one another's citizens, they must not unintentionally, I want to argue unintentionally, lead or spill over to other things we have not actually, would have not actually planned for. On the BRICS venue, I will respond to your questions, Pamandla, more positively than saying why. When the delegation and a number of logistic imperatives were analyzed with this conference, Gauteng became a leader in terms of facilities required. So against that background, Gauteng's capacity found the way to be chosen. On the Afghan nationals, we're taking the cue from the minister on this because there was a debate whether appeal or not, but the court's advice is that what you are concerned about in the appeal is what you can consider when you consider whether they qualify for whatever kind of status. Court may not be the necessary platform to deal with that. So we're taking a cue in as far as that matter is concerned. But we remain concerned that any country or any human being can just dump people in your country and then automatically expect that this country must just say yes, a later. So we're taking a cue from the Minister of Home Affairs, who has demonstrated a lot of energy in dealing with this matter. Sure, spell it.
Former Deputy President.
Thank you very much. Maybe let me put it this way. Deputy President Mabuza has been allocated tasks by the President. Whether it's on HIV, the transformation in the traditional leader, and then in rural development, and even an ESCOM task team, and all those matters, in terms of the records in front of the President, the Deputy President did care. By the way, if I may take this opportunity, when we talk about, as we say here, for instance, if I give you an example, that there's a lot of things we don't speak about which are very positive. For instance, did we all know that the economy grew by 12.5% last year? Did we all know that after a long time, 2022 gave us no less than 1.5 million up employment positive results? I can go on, and then did we all know that one of the biggest cry in Guyana of connecting water from Ndoli to Nzami Dam. That has been completed. I can go on and list these issues. That we found solutions and to fund huge water scheme interventions. All this work, Spomandla, it's happening under the presidency where Deputy President Mabuza has been part. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. We'll now move to the online questions. Pelusa, can you help us just reach through?
Thank you. The first question we have is from Christian DPC, Network 24. Minister Pravin Gordhan has acknowledged that Mr. Director reported the allegations of corruption to him. The question is, did Minister Gordhan share this detail with Cabinet, and what was done about it? If not, did Minister Gordhan not have a duty to report it to Cabinet? Does Minister Gordhan not himself have an obligation in terms of PRECA to report it? The second question from Christian still. When will President Ramaphosa announce the reshuffle of his cabinet? Will it be today? Moving on, the next question is from Paul Vecchiato from Bloomberg. He is asking, was Cabinet surprised by the Deputy President's resignation as a Member of Parliament and by the rapid appointment of the Minister of Finance as a Member of Parliament? Because both events took place very suddenly and with none of the usual announcements that formally precede such events. The third question, the third person that is asking the questions is Kulekani Makubane from Business Times. His question is, did Cabinet discuss the looming electricity tariff hike, which comes amid worsening load shedding and rising fuel prices? How successful was the President, if at all, in holding off this hike from coming into effect in April? The next question is from Anton Meyer from Pretoria FM. He is asking about the deadline for the electoral amendment bill. He says it was on the 28th of February as ordered by the Constitutional Court. Now the question is, did President Cyril Ramaphosa take Cabinet into his confidence on why he failed to meet the deadline to sign the bill into law? Paul again comes back to ask, how long does Cabinet expect to rectify the issues around the FATF grey listing? And
can you repeat that?
How long, that is Paul Vecchiato from Bloomberg, is asking, how long does Cabinet expect to rectify the issues around the FATF grey listing? And he's also asking, has Cabinet been informed about a proposed US Congress bill to review that country's ties with South Africa following the military exercises with Russia and China? If so, what will the South African government's response be? That is all for now, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Peluso. Minister, over to you.
And the salary. Colleagues, the stance of the Cabinet, we are not going to respond differently on this matter, is that the allegations by former CEO Director are called upon by all of us to present facts so that we can deal with those. And of course, there are institutions established to deal with that. even if those allegations he made to the Minister of Department of the Public Enterprise, Mr. Gordon, it doesn't change the fact that finally they must be dealt with by appropriate institutions. So we leave that matter there because, to be honest with you, we take serious what the CEO has raised. But we also argue that a CEO can do better, because a CEO is put in a position of power, empowered to deal with that information, unlike an ordinary citizen who is an ordinary whistleblower. And we want to argue that a CEO can do better in that position, a CEO who really respects the fiduciary responsibilities that are accompanying the job. And we still believe the Director can go further and actually give us more information. And we would request we leave this matter. Dealing with individual politicians, neither here. When you go to this, if you can check a number of names that have been actually dragged in public about this. Can you imagine every time somebody says Minister so-and-so, that this president must run? And I keep on using myself, Pamela, that not once, sometimes I was said to be leading a syndicate of billions in PIC. If we follow this, the president will say, come Mondli, wait, let's go and do investigation. Can go on, and so on. Sometimes it was said I committed fraud by signing a contract. You go and all these things, a lot of these things, there are institutions to deal with them. We want to support and we take serious what Mr. Director said. Take into account that the positions he held. But I want to dare make this argument that I think a CEO can do better. And we think Mr. Director will take that into account to assist the country. Because the fact that he makes that allegation, it means he's concerned about this. And also the cabinet would want to support him in that regard. On the reshuffle, you know the common answer. I just like I think Vincent dealt with this nicely. I was listening to him. He dealt with this nicely. You know that the president has acknowledged the need to close the gaps. The president has made an undertaking to appoint a minister of electricity. Naturally, once he acknowledges the gap and he makes an undertaking to that job will be done, but the dates, time, the hour, the president. That's the one answer. There's always a hope that a different answer is going to come. Was the president surprised by what to call? By resignation? I don't think so. The president would have spoken about this even in public, that the president expressed his contemplation to leave, but he agreed that please wait a little bit. I want to move from a point that, in line with his agreement with the president, he has acted in line with that. I want to believe. Swearing in of Minister Kodongwan. A number of times when the parliament is full, as you know, the president is entitled to a number of ministers we can pull from outside the list. Sometimes if the gap is opened, if there's a gap that comes out in parliament, you've got no reason to have a minister who remains an outsider, because a minister who keeps a status of being a non-parliamentarian is a -1 vote. So if there's a gap, you need to close that gap. There are many reasons that could be done for. If the president might be considering somebody from outside to appoint as a minister, there could be many reasons, but I don't want to speculate the reasons. But I'm saying there's a number of reasons that lead to that. So I can't see Mr. Kodongwana falling outside those reasons. Did the cabinet discuss the tariff? The stance of the cabinet is in line with that of the president, that tariffs come at a time when the load shedding is actually hitting our people very bad. And the call by the president was that as the independent institution NASA deals with this thing, can you take into account whichever way you execute it? But this must be taken into account. The cabinet can't go beyond that because NASA is an independent institution in this regard. But the cabinet, through the voice of the president, would have strongly spoken. I hope NASA will look at that because we cannot instruct them on this matter. On the electoral bill, we accept the deadline by the Constitution, but the president has a duty to look at the bill critically, not just to sign because the date has come. So we want to assume that the president is exercising his responsibility in as far as authenticating that bill is concerned. And we hope within reasonable time the bill will go through. That's the little I can say about the electoral bill.